It's for real.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Let's Get Ready Network. I'm Adelia. That's my buddy Josh. This is Nostalgia Crackdown, our Schmoedown retrospective show. And this is airing on Christmas Day, so Merry Christmas to everyone out there. We're talking about what was for a long time the Schmoedown's Christmas gift to us all, end of year gift to us all, which was Schmoedown Spectacular. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. I hope everyone who's watching is having a happy holidays whenever they're watching, and I'm happy to give this Christmas treat to you guys, and this is an exciting episode. I'm happy to break it down.
All right, so let's start with what Schmoedown Spectacular was, because it started out as just like this event that appeared at the end of season 3, and I think it really turned into the most important of all the big events in the Schmoedown.
Absolutely. It was it became basically the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, if you will. It was like, and I think that shows the evolution of the Schmoedown as a sport. The last match of the season is always going to come down to that. It's your last chance to become a champion, to put your mark later on, to win the faction race. And with that, when it comes to sports seasons, I feel like the last game of the season is always going to have an inherent amount of both emotional and great state and physical might not be the right word, but just a lot of stakes. And that we got so many great matches coming from Spectacular that every Schmoedown fan was looking forward to it, especially because I'll also quickly mention that a lot of the Schmoedown Spectacular matches were between champions versus tournament winners. Yeah. So you have someone who just had an amazing tournament run, and the Schmoedown tournaments are a beast within themselves. So you have all this hype coming off of an incredible tournament run versus the current champ, which is always going to get the maximum amount of respect. So with that formula, you're always going to get at least interesting matches, hyped matches in so many senses.
Absolutely. And we got some fantastic matches at Spectacular over the years. Of course, leading up to the final Schmoedown event ever, which was the final Spectacular ever. We'll get to that. But do you just have like any general reflections on Spectacular as a whole that you want to share?
That's a good question. I think that like my reflection on it is like I'm looking back on it when I was going through the Spectaculars. I realized there were some that were way more exciting and way more fun than the others, which is wasn't what I was expecting, but that makes sense. There are some Super Bowls that you're like, oh, well, the Super Bowl is always great, but then you sometimes get a Super Bowl that like the Patriots Rams, where it's like, oh, no one's scoring. But we got a couple Spectaculars like that. We will be going over that, but like the good ones are really good, and there's so many memorable that I'm excited to get into.
Yeah. Well, the Spectacular started at the end of season 3. I remember everybody waiting for it to be uploaded to Collider and them having to put out like a tweet saying we have to split it into 2 files because it's too big. So Spectacular 3 is on Collider as 2 videos. But there were some big moments in that first Spectacular, including the first ever Inner Geekdom match, the Fatal 5-Way, in which Robert Meyer Burnett becomes the inaugural IG champion. And of course, also in that Spectacular was the Patriots becoming the champs for the first time, defeating Top 10 to start their dominance. Really an important moment in the Schmoedown history.
Absolutely, an important moment, and I might be biased in this, but not as fun of a moment, if you will, compared to other. When I was talking about Rams, Patriots, Super Bowl, that wasn't as fun. This is one of those where I was referencing, and I'm going to say I'm a bit biased because I did not watch this live. This was before my time as a Schmoedown fan, so I don't have the nostalgia of going back and being like, oh, I remember watching this live. I was so hyped for this. And a couple things, like one of the biggest and most important matches is the Fatal 5-Way Intergeekdom first championship match. I don't like 5-ways. I just
Yeah.
especially championship match 5-ways. I'm not a fan of it. Both Intergeekdom and Star Wars, I believe, had one, and I'm just like, it just doesn't have the same stakes. I don't think the format's meant. It's not as fine tuned as the one-on-one Schmoedown matches we get, and you get wonky stuff when we get 5-ways. Like I think we have some of the greatest Intergeekdom players of all time, Mike Kaunowski and Rachel Cushing, and both of them I think had terrible records in Intergeekdom 5-ways. I think Coy won one of those 5-ways. We see Burnett become the first Intergeekdom champion in this 5-way, and then never win an Intergeekdom match again, I believe.
I don't think he ever did, no.
Yeah, so it's just like it's extremely important for the history of the Schmoedown because Intergeekdom is one of my favorite divisions. This is the first Intergeekdom match, basically. This is the first championship match, and but like the actual match, I'm like, I'll be honest, I'm not again 5-ways. Not the same spark, if you will.
No, I totally agree. Like, it's much more compelling when you're watching one-on-one competition than it is when it's 1 versus 4, you know? Um, the Fatal 5-Ways, I understand why they did them when they were trying to establish the divisions, but once you got the divisions established, they needed to go away more than they actually did. But yeah, I think that they could have probably come up with a way to do a little mini tournament or something to get to this first IG championship match as opposed to just jumping straight into a fatal 5-way with 5 competitors. It was Ashley V. Robinson, Robert Meyer Burnett, Jeremy Johns, Hector Navarro, and John Campia. And like I believe that Campia never played again after that. I believe Jeremy Johns didn't really play very
Well,
much
he
after
did
that
actually.
either.
Jeremy Jones did go on a run to a championship match against Hector Navarro.
That's right, he did. He that was like the end of his playing after that.
Yes.
I don't remember if Ashley V. Robinson played very much after that, and Robert Meyer Burnett turned into more of a manager before the end. So, yeah, not
Funny
the
enough, Hector Navarro was the one who had you could argue, the most successful career out of those 5.
yeah, you could. But yeah, that was not the best of matches, but I was so excited to get an Intergeekdom division watching at the time that I was just cool with it. I do remember watching it and just going, "How did Robert Meyer Burnett win this match?"
I'm glad that was the thought in the moment as
Yeah,
like after the moment. It like because looking back, I don't know what the thought was. Again, I wasn't watching at the time. I was like, oh, it's Robert. I wonder what people thought of Burnett. Like if people thought Burnett would actually defend a couple times. But yeah. So the other big match is Patriots versus Top 10, and this was history defining match because Top 10, I believe, never wins the championship again after this, and the Patriots go on
no.
this dominant run, and
Mhm.
it's truly like, oh, this is the start of like it's almost like watching the prequels, if you will, and like seeing Palpatine like before or like slowly like rise to power, and it's like, oh, this is how they did it in a way, because it's like now watching back, we know what happens with the Patriots. We know they dominate the next season, and I think they lose after the next, but like they basically extremely dominate and go on one of the most dominant runs a team has ever gone on. You can argue the most dominant run a team has ever gone on for sure, with a
Yes,
crazy amount of defenses. And with Top 10, they never reached the same heights because they could never beat the Patriots.
that's true. This sort of was the end of the of Top 10's run at the top, even though I believe they do come back in Spectacular 2 and win a number 1 contenders match against Team Action. We'll talk about that in a minute. They don't ever topple the Patriots again and get those championships back, and then Matt Nose retires and Roka goes on to other things. Yeah, so uh, that was a very big moment in Schmoedown history. No one knew what was coming from the Patriots then, because that was only the Patriots' 3rd match, I want to say. And so nobody knew the role they were about to go on.
Absolutely. So heading on into Spectacular 2, this was my first Spectacular, and again, I'm biased, but this one has a more fond place in my heart. You have the Knapsack versus Whitwer Iron Man Star Wars match. You can argue like one of the best matches, not just Star Wars, but like just an incredible. I think the best showcase of an Iron Man match. This Iron Man match was so, like we never got like no other Iron Man match has lived up to this Iron Man match. We get
Totally agree.
Patriots versus Above the Line 1, which is the first creak in the Patriots armor after this year of dominance. We finally have a team that looks like they can beat them. That's like, oh, because that Above the Line tournament run was absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have even the like usually what the Spectacular does is they have all these championship matches and then one match that's like a number one contendership or a manager ball or something like that. And usually we don't talk about that. We're probably not going to talk a lot about those matches here because they're not as memorable. I mean, they're fun, but like they're kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. It's but this one I would argue has one of the most memorable non-championship matches of Spectacular's history with Action versus Top 10, huge rivalry. So like Roca, Ben Bateman, and Andrew Guy all in their prime of just like awesome character work. And then you have the tackle, which was absolutely insane to watch live. Like there's
Oh
so much
yeah.
going on in the Spectacular.
Yeah, there is other matches. We had Jason Inman become the new IG champion in this spectacular, and the Manager Bowl, which Emma Fife won over Jay Washington, Ricky Hayberg, and Finstock. Not surprising there.
Mhm.
And Sam Levine beat Christian Harloff to become the singles champ for the first time. So this was a fun spectacular for sure. I mean, nothing stands out to me at the spectacular the way that the tackle does. I'll never forget the tackle. Um, that was a controversial moment that was a great storyline beat that they hit in that rivalry between Top 10 and Team Action.
Absolutely. I mean, this is like it's funny because like you have some of the greatest matches of all. You have one of the greatest matches of all time with Now versus Whitwer. You have the first meeting of Patriots versus Above the Line. You have Sam Levine winning his first belt, which later, if we're talking about like first championship meaning, Levine later goes on, and we didn't know this at the time. I definitely didn't think this. Goes on to be arguably the GOAT between him and Merle. I think most people would give it to Levine, especially what he does in later seasons. Levine goes on an incredible run. We're talking about dominance as well. Like you could argue Levine's dominance in both singles and teams in this season and this upcoming season matches the Patriots. Yet you could argue by far the most memorable, not by far, but a lot of people's most memorable moment is a story beat and with the tackle. And that's what makes the Schmoedown so great, if you will. So you have all these great matches, all this great stuff that makes the Schmoedown so great, the competitiveness and all that. And you just have that one story moment that brings it all home, that makes you care about the storyline in a way that like is so important.
Yeah. And we had a bit of controversy at the end of the Iron Man match as well when Sam Witwer answered the question after the time had run out. But that was the rules. If you rang in before the time ran out, you could answer the question still. And Ken Knapsack was not happy about that.
I'll be honest, like this might be a controversial take. I am someone who will never get mad at like reffing controversies in sports or anything like that. I think it
Yeah.
adds to the flavor a little bit. I mean, obviously there's a limit. If it's like an egregious no call or something, that sucks. What can you do? But like if it's like a 50-50 play like that, where Knapsack is, or like, oh, this in slow motion, it's like they got away with something, or in slow motion. I guess that's a maybe iffy call, but in slow motion it's justified in some way. I think that adds to the flair. It adds to the legend, and it makes the match more memorable in sporting in both the Schmoedown. And again, like we have a lot of great matches coming up after this, and I think not a lot of people would. I wonder where Knapsack versus Whitwer would rank in all-time Schmoedown matches. It's probably in my personal top 5, but there's so many great matches that like you can make the argument it's closer to top 10 than it is top 5, but it's such an incredible, like truly. I remember I was like, the match was so good. It made me want more Iron Man matches, which is funny because I learned afterwards Iron Man matches are not as fun by far, but this one works so well. I think the Star Wars division is especially suited for an Iron Man match more than other divisions for sure, and partially because when it comes to Iron Man matches, they're just pure questions,
Yeah.
and that's good and all in some sense. But what makes Schmoedown great is the format of the game and the questions. I think why it works so well in Star Wars, at least for me. I don't know any Star Wars questions. I watch the movies, I enjoy them. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, so the questions, I'm like, it's tough for me to care about the strategy in a Star Wars game compared to others because I kind of can have a better feel for what's tough questions, what's easy questions, what categories are more. With Star Wars, it's just like I'm just watching pure knowledge versus pure knowledge, watching
Yeah.
two people go 100%. In that sense, I'm fine with just letting it be an Iron Man match. Like, let's just we're getting people who are not missing a question anyway. The strategy doesn't really matter as much when you're just not missing. Like, if it's
Yeah.
going to be perfect on perfect, you may as well just make it an Iron Man match.
Absolutely. And then we get to Spectacular 3, part of season 5 in 2018. We have Mike Kalinowski versus Mara Kanopic 2, where Mike becomes the IG champ for the first time. And the Shire Wolves versus Who's the Boss for the Shire Wolves to retain their team's championships. This was fun, these matches at this one. There was also the Commissioner Bowl, which was that whole wrapping up that whole anarchy storyline nonsense.
In my opinion, the
It,
best manager bowl, like
it
out of
was,
all of them.
yeah,
Not a high
yeah,
bar,
not a high
admittedly.
bar. Emma Fife won that in sudden death. We also had Dan Murrell beat Clark Wolf to become the number one contender. We had Alex Damon beat Ken Knapsack to retain the Star Wars Championship, and Ethan Irwin TKO'd John Roca to become the new singles champion at that Spectacular.
Absolutely. There's a lot to go on. My biggest memory of this match is the Knopic versus Kalinowski because that was
Yeah,
such a great rivalry. And Kalinowski, because I think that this is a huge turning point for Kalinowski because this whole season was built around him. It was the corruption season. It was all built around him. And I think and this might be silly, and because he's now one of, when we're talking about goats, or Rushmore, he's up there with Merle and Levine. You can even make a really good argument that he's over Merle just because of his dominance in 3 divisions. But I think if he loses this match, his career takes a drastic turn because it's so much tougher to when a storyline's built around you. If you don't become a champion, you start to feel the Brandon Hanna effect, in my opinion. And I apologize to Brandon Hanna for naming this after him, but like, you can't be the big villain and then lose in the most important matches. You don't get the credibility. It's tougher to take you seriously in a way, and that matters. Storyline matters in you getting matches, getting favorable matches. And also, especially when you lose to Knopic twice. This would be his second loss to Knopic, and who knows when he gets another chance because um, at that point, you can make the argument that, like, okay, I mean, like, we have to give all these other IG players a chance because Mike's shown he can't beat Mark Kanopic twice. So it's a huge, like, this winning cements him as at least one of the main names to watch because he cements that, like, oh, the storyline was built around him and he became a champion. And it's such a satisfying conclusion in a lot of ways because he does get his comeuppance in a lot of ways, but he also gets what he wanted in the end, and that was an IG championship.
yeah, absolutely. This was 26-25 final score and sudden death for Mike to win. Just one of the great IG championship matches we've ever seen. And
It goes
between
to
two of
sudden
the
death
two of the
as
great
well.
players, yeah, goes to sudden death. Like, it's a phenomenal match. Also, a phenomenal match was that Shire Wolves Who's the Boss match. We had the storyline after this with Bateman and Guy. Wasn't this where Guy tackles him through the table? I
I
believe.
believe so. I believe so.
Yeah, because this is the end of Anarchy. So yeah, he wants to keep playing with Riley. So yeah, this is when this was. And Ethan Irwin gets to be the singles champion at the end of this spectacular as well. So great things happened in that spectacular.
Absolutely. I
Then
mean, what I was just going to say quickly with the Shire Wolves and Who's the Boss is I think this is the perfect representation of what I said earlier, where you have the Who's the Boss. amazing teams tournament, one of the most memorable teams tournaments we had. I would argue maybe the most memorable, given the whole Matt actually challenging his own question: who's the boss going on this incredible run? What's called the Harris brothers also having an incredible run to the final. So many memorable teams, and like who's the
Mhm.
boss looked truly unbeatable, and that they looked incredible. And the Shire Wolves, I mean, the Shire Wolves. Oh, now we definitely view them as one of the greatest teams of all time, and like beasts. But like, I remember some of the talk going into it is like, well, they had a really easy schedule to get to the belt. You know, they haven't faced the tougher teams. What will happen when they face a real challenge? So you have these really good champions that like, oh, let's see their first real test versus because again, the Shire Wolves won the belt from the Brienne Chandler um free
And
for
that
all
yeah.
also because Above the Line retired, so they didn't even face an incumbent champion. It was the belts were vacated, and because of that, it allowed the shot. And the Shire was already earned their number one contender shot. So this felt like their first real challenge, and we got like two heavyweight fights. It really felt like it was truly an incredible match.
Absolutely. Moving on to Spectacular 4 in season 6. This was the first time they did Spectacular as a live event. And we had what I call the Bateman double, which is winning the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament, singles tournament in the first match against Bibbs, and then coming back by the end of that night and KOing Paul Oyama to win the belt. We also had a really, really good Star Wars match between Alex Damon and Laura Kelly, where Alex Damon retained his Star Wars championship. We had Roka being incredibly sick and almost not playing, but deciding to play and then helping Founding Fathers TKO Shazam. And Smets also KO'd Kalinowski to win the IG belt for the first time. So this was a pretty monumental spectacular, even if the match quality was maybe not as good as you would have hoped.
Absolutely, but I wouldn't even argue, even though the match quantity maybe wasn't as good, there's a lot of KOs and TKOs. That kind of makes it more memorable and adds to the flavor of the spectacular because everyone remembers the Bateman going KOing Paul Oyama. That was so unexpected and so crazy. Also, Founding Fathers TKOing Shazam when Shazam looked unbeatable, and also Roka was sick. Absolutely incredible. Smets KOing Kalinowski because everyone thought that would, like after the last Smets versus Kalinowski match, and who can forget Smets winning that belt, the crowd cheering him on. It was like I always that will be always cemented in my head that Smets winning that belt for the first time and how good it felt despite like they were trying to play him a little heelish. I
Yeah.
remember, but it just it just didn't work because we like sports stories where the hardworking someone who's clearly hardworking and who clearly just cares about the craft, and even if he does it in the not most sportsmanship way, it's like Kobe. Like everyone loves Kobe for a reason, really. It's that mentality, and like Smets, in a lot of ways, had that mentality and put it into a Schmoedown character, if you will. I mean, the hoodie by itself just showed all business, going to knock you out. Absolutely incredible. And also Bateman was coming into this with a back injury because
Mhm.
the Bibbs versus Bateman match was not supposed to be as spectacular. He had this
Yeah.
huge back surgery, and there was talk about him possibly having to step down from the tournament and giving Bibbs the I believe the number one contendership, and he'll have it next year or something. But Bibbs insisted that not that Bibbs insisted, no, I want to play Bateman for it. Can we try and push it to Spectacular? And Christian agreed. Like, there's so many very memorable moments. You have two injured players, and also extremely important about the Spectacular. This was a huge Spectacular because this was going to decide who was going to stay going into the draft. And the way
Mhm.
it fell out was somewhat perfect, or perfect for because in the end, this wasn't great for the Finstock exchange, but like the exchange got to keep everyone. They got to keep Bateman. They got to keep because Bateman and Riley were top 5 teams. They got to keep Bateman as well because he's the singles champ, and they got to keep the founding fathers because they're the team's champ. I believe that's how it was.
I believe that's how it was. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember that because that has to be why they kept Riley. No, sorry, they kept Riley because Bateman was the singles champ and they couldn't break up top. Who's the boss?
Yeah, they couldn't break up a top 5 team.
Yes, so that's what it was. Yes, I couldn't remember why Riley was kept, but that is why. So going into that, the exchange were able to just keep this super team and going. And I remember the feel after the spectacular was like, oh, the exchange has won the first year of the faction system. And I remember there was a lot of talk of like, this is a dynasty, you have to break them up, the whole thing, which I personally completely disagreed with. But either way, so like also part of the reason that is so important that the exchange got to keep their members is that a lot of people didn't get to keep their champions. Oyama doesn't get to stay with the dungeon because he didn't win the belt. Bibbs, I don't believe, had a manager at the time, so but Shazam didn't have a manager at the time as well, so those are washes. Kalinowski, I don't think was guaranteed to stay with Corruption. But what's very funny at the time, and I remember this, is like people were wondering if because Kalinowski and Chance were open to the draft. They could have been drafted by any team.
That's true.
But they kind of fell in the draft because this was when people were lowest on them. Mike just got absolutely knocked out. People were wondering how much value would he earn in IG? Is he done with IG? I mean, after that type of loss, he's got to take a break. Corruption just lost to the founding fathers. Like, really, the reason to draft Mike at the time, you can make the argument was Chance because Chance was such an up-and-coming and rising player. But that was, and it's silly to talk about now because Mike goes on to do this incredible run. He cements himself as one of the GOATs of the Schmoedown division. But I remember that draft talk, and I don't even remember what pick Corruption was, but people were like, yeah, Mike's probably going to fall back to Corruption because I don't think it makes sense for any other team to draft him, which was very funny and weird to say because looking back on it, you can make the argument that, like, easily make the argument that, like, Mike and Chance should have been the number one pick. They were proven champions. Mike was a 3-division champ. We later learned Chance is a 3-division champ. I mean, Shazam is great and all, but Corruption leads. I mean, Mike and Chance lead Corruption to winning the faction season every season it's available.
Yeah, a lot of stuff really shook out based on the results at Spectacular and really shaped season 7, which was where we get to Spectacular 5, the COVID Spectacular. This one was not a live event. It was back to pre-taped, but done as a live stream for people to pay-per-view to tune in and watch. And there was a lot of stuff on here that I liked. And there's one thing on here that I absolutely hated. So we had Alex Damon defeat Andres Cabrera to retain the Star Wars Championship. Brittany Young defeated Chris Jericho. I totally forgot that was a spectacular match until I was doing research for this. The Odd Couple and Shazam had phenomenal match where the Odd Couple upsets Shazam and
easily top 10 match of all time.
Oh, easily. Chandru defeats Chance Ellison to retain the IG Championship. Adam Collins defeats Dan Murrell in sudden death to become the new singles champion after his great tournament run, and that was just a phenomenal ending to that story of Adam Collins that year. And then, of course, Kevin Smith TKOing the Flirt and Flouse. I put in the notes that I could rant about this for a minute, but I'm not going to. I just don't see why this needed to be on here at all.
Like, I will say, to play devil's advocate, I do get the argument. The Kevin Smith and Chris Jericho matches are not for us, people who are already extremely invested within the Schmoedown. They are for the casual fan who's like, oh, Kevin Smith's playing a movie trivia thing. Let me see it. And what they did, I'll be honest, I don't think I forgot about the Chris Jericho thing. I don't think we needed 2 of those matches taking up Spectacular. No. Like, one is enough. Especially, like, no offense to the Flair and Fast and Brittany Young, but, like, this is the Super Bowl of the Schmoedown, and I don't think they've proven themselves to the point to I mean, it might be condescending to say earn that right, but like this is the Super Bowl, and it's I don't know. I wasn't excited for either of these matches, but I understood it because they were like, okay, they're not for me. What they are for is the common fan to be introduced to the Schmoedown, and you're like, oh, how are you going to introduce to the character aspect? Because Kevin Smith and Chris Jericho can obviously wrestler can play the character, but Kevin Smith's probably just going to be out there, be himself, have fun. Is like, oh, if Kevin Smith's not going to play a character, why don't we throw the biggest character on one spectrum, which is
It was Brett Sheridan. I don't know why we couldn't have just done Kevin Smith versus Brett Sheridan. Why did it have to be just as a Flirt and Klaus? Why did this have to be
I remember because it was
event?
at the time during the COVID season, it felt like the Schmoedown was so connected to Christian Harloff's live morning show.
SEN, yeah.
Yes. And the Flirt and Flaus was just a huge hit on that morning show. It was
For
like
some people.
for some people, yes, but it was something that like got a lot of positive reception. I remember watching that live and seeing the comments being like, "Get him in the Schmoedown," blah blah blah. Everyone was in on the bit, if you will. For a lot of people were in on the bit. So like,
Yeah.
I understand it. Again, I part of me wishes like you did the Chris Jericho and Kevin Smith thing separate as Spectacular. Have it be a one night event, a pay per view, whatever, however you want to do it, make it free. Advertise it like heck. That like this is you're getting two like very famous people playing movie trivia Schmoedown, and then you have two matches open for Spectacular. I wish it was something like that, but I
Yeah.
understand the argument that's like, oh, it's Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith is like him, like the question is how famous do you get to automatically get a spectacular match? Like if Steven Spielberg was playing his first Schmoedown match, it would be in Spectacular because that's the biggest event. And like if you're going to show off Spielberg, it's like that. Kevin Smith, not as famous as Spielberg, but I mean it's up there, especially for a big movie fan. So like I understand. It's just I wonder what the bar is for like
Yeah.
how famous do you have to be to instantly get a spectacular match. I think that's an interesting to go on about. But also why I didn't mind it as much is because this Spectacular rocks, man. We have one of the greatest matches
Right.
of all
Yeah.
time with Odd Couple versus Shazam. That match was so good. And this is what my favorite example of like the 5-pointer, man. The 5-pointer gets the best of us. And it just shows you because Shazam is truly like when they truly look unbeatable in every match they play almost every match they play. They're so accurate, they're so deadly, they know the game inside and out, but you can do everything right. You can be extremely knowledgeable, you can study so hard, you can put the right thing on the wheel, but as long as your opponent stays within 5 points. And the Odd Couple, we shouldn't we talk about Shazam so much, but the Odd Couple also played an incredible game. They
They
were
did.
with within fighting distance the entire game. And when you're within 5 points, it doesn't as long as you are within 5 points, doesn't matter who you're up against. As long as you are within 5 points, you hit your 5-pointer, you always have a shot.
Yeah, that Odd Couple Shazam match is one I've gone back and watched several times since that Spectacular, and it's just a phenomenal match. And so was the Adam Collins Dan Murrell match. That was also a really good match. Went to sudden death. I don't think anyone expected Adam Collins to beat Dan Murrell, but after the tournament run that he went on, he was just clicking on all cylinders as far as movie trivia went, and he got that victory, and it cemented his legacy in the Schmoedown, even though I think the tournament run would have done that without but you win the championship, it's obviously cemented, but that's spectacular.
And also, it clinched, if I remember correctly, clinched a corruption faction win.
I
So
believe it
like,
did, yeah.
and that was a huge thing. Is like I remember, I actually, my memory of it was more 50-50. Like a lot, no one would bet against Merle because this is like, Merle in a lot of ways is a lot like LeBron in his prime in a lot of ways. Whereas there's like you don't bet against LeBron, you don't bet against Brady, stuff like. But Maybe Brady actually more than LeBron. Merle's very similar to like Brady. You don't bet against Brady, but like Collins looked as good of a contender as anyone because he came out of nowhere and he didn't have easy matches in the tournament. I think in like the first round after he wins this play-in match, which by the way he had one more match than everyone because he had a play-in match. He TKOs John Roca, so that alone like
Mhm.
builds up a legend. And I will say I really feel bad for Collins because I think personally he got not maybe screwed is the wrong word, but I think it was a grave mistake, or just like somewhat unfair for his first championship defense to be against Dan Murrell again.
Yeah.
I I'm like I do not like the like I just beat you for the championship. You are my first number one. You are my first number one contender. I'm like at least
Yeah.
wait one cycle, in my opinion. I'm sure maybe there were scheduling reasons why Merle was in that number one contendership, but like I don't like it in any sense. I understand giving Dan Merle a number one contendership after that amazing run he went on, but wait one cycle. Let someone else let Collins defend against someone else because also in the Schmoedown, when you are playing a player like Dan Merle, it's hard to beat him once, let alone twice.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things. This is maybe a bit off spectacular, but it's just something that's annoying me to this day. Is like I think you have to wait one cycle to play the same guy again because it's Showdown players are so good. It's very tough to beat someone twice.
Agreed. I agree with that. Then we get to season 8, Spectacular 6, 2021. This was the last live event that was a spectacular. I was at this spectacular. Um, what was it like watching this from home?
It was enjoyable. Like I've always like I'm at to a fault a homebody. Like like yes, I went to one Schmoedown live event and it was fun, but part of me also and this may be sacrilegious in a way enjoys it more at home sometimes. Just like I get like a tub of ice cream, I get like sweets and like pretzels and stuff, and as I'm watching the match and like I've got like the whole room to myself usually, and it's like I really enjoy setting up that like atmosphere for myself and there were a
Mhm.
lot of great matches. I remember I was extremely invested in the exchange not winning the season because I think it was very close between the exchange and corruption. I was just like,
Yes.
I don't care because I'm to a fault a huge Dan Merle fan. I was like, okay, if I'm going to choose my favorite team, it's going to be Merle, and I've been that way the majority of the Schmoedown. So like, I rooted for Merle to end up as the goat. Sadly, I'm not sure if I think that ended up that way, but um, I was rooting so hard against the exchange, and I'm so glad corruption won. I think they really deserved it. It was a great match in a lot of ways, so many great matches, and
Yeah.
we have Shazam holding off King Arthur. We have Roka's retirement match, which
Uh,
I believe Dan Murrell won, right?
Dan Murrell won that match. Yes.
I'm so happy. I'm like I was so invested in that match as a Dan Murrell fan.
I didn't
Mer
watch that match. I left and went and got pizza with Video Drew during that match. And then we came back and watched the rest of Spectacular. I just I know it's Roka and I know it was Merle and I know that it was Roka's retirement match and everything, but I just didn't care. I
I
just
get it. I just like I wanted more. I didn't want Roka to win, and I'm so on Team Merle. I was so
yeah.
invested in that side, and like if Roka like beat Merle as his retirement, just as someone who rooted for Merle and rooted against Roka in a lot of ways, just as a fan, not as a person, I'm saying, but as a fan, it would have been not devastating, but I would have been very sad. It would have tainted
Yeah.
maybe my view of the spectacular.
Yeah.
Um,
We also had Thomas Harper defeat Nikki DiMolanta in a fantastic Star Wars match to retain his Star Wars championship. Mike Kalinowski beating Robert Parker in sudden death to retain the IG championship. And Marisol beat Griffey Nooms to retain her singles championship. This is the only spectacular where there was not a title change.
oh,
Every
that's
other
interesting.
spectacular had a title change. So I have a one little like behind the scenes thing I was gonna show. Where I was sitting was like on a sofa in the very back behind the curtain. So like I could see the stage from where I was sitting, but there was a curtain over here for people, and I'll just show you like this is Robert Parker and Kaiser getting ready to go out to his match. So this is like where I was sitting, was back here. And then at the end of the night, after the Marisol and Griffey Nooms match, Chandru jumps up on stage and grabs the mic and does all this nonsense about how no one can beat him, and he just wants to fight. And then I'll play the video clip, but I muted this because the sound was just so loud. So there's Chandru on stage, and then the lights go out, and I just see this guy in a hoodie. Like you'll catch it in a second. I just see this guy in a hoodie walk past me and come over here, and this is when I was like, "Oh shit, Smets is coming back." So this is like 3 years too late, behind the scenes exclusive footage of Smets making his entrance to the Schmoedown again. But yeah, I just wanted to play that and just say that was pretty cool to witness. And I got that because I was sitting on a sofa in the back instead of sitting with the crowd. So, and also I met the Real Rejects. That was pretty sweet. So that I had a lot of fun at that spectacular. I would have wanted to go to a live event again, and then of course there never was one because we get to Spectacular 7, season 9, and it is the end. It's the final event of the Schmoedown as a whole. And this is a weird spectacular for me because they tried to mix like nostalgia and what was going on in season 9 together. So we've got Who's the Boss defeat the ruling class in a pretty good match. It was 40-37. We've got King Arthur Tokyo Drift defeating Shazam to become the final team's champions. That's with Paul Oyama filling in for Griffey Nooms on King Arthur because he couldn't make it to the spectacular tapings that day. Marisol McKee defeats Rachel Cushing in just a match. I don't really remember why we had that match, other than they were probably the two most successful singles female players that we ever had in the Schmoedown. And then there was a fatal four-way for the Inner Geekdom belt between Smets, Parker, Kanopik, and Chandru. Smets becoming the final IG champion. I believe Kalinowski was unable to be there that day as well because he should have been in that match. Andrew Dimolanta beat Nikki Dimolanta to be the final Star Wars champion, and Sam Levine TKO Dan Murrell to be the final singles champion. What did you think about that spectacular?
I'm going to be honest. This might be a hot take. I hate the spectacular. I hate it with a passion. It's like everything. It's like every like dream scenario, which has no stakes because it's like what's the point of following this whole season? And it's like, oh, all that we're not going to follow through any of the storylines. We're not going to throw out. I remember Marisol and Bateman had a number one contender match. We're not going to do that or follow through with that. And like I understand the reasoning; they didn't have much time, but like, yeah, I don't know how you could have a satisfying conclusion based on how abruptly it ended and how they didn't have a lot of. So I'm not blaming the Schmoedown. I'm not blaming this, but like, to me, this had no stakes. It's just every dream scenario with like, oh, I guess we're having Marisol versus Rachel. Okay, Rachel hasn't played in so many years, but I guess that's cool. Who's the Boss is back. Okay, that was the one that was the most out of left field to me.
Yeah.
I was very. I'll be honest. I was very. I mean, in the ruling class as well. I guess that was the one nod of like this season is having the ruling class play a match, and who's the boss? I guess. Okay, sure. Dibalanta's awesome. That was the one I was honestly. That was the one that was like that felt the best. I just spent the beginning of this video talking about how much I hate 5 ways. Surprisingly, 4 ways, not that different of an opinion for 4 ways versus 5 ways.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I guess we're just having every single like great IG player playing against each other, and that's fine, I guess. But I'll be honest, like I don't put a lot of stock in 5 ways to 4 ways. It's tough for me to put a lot of stock in 5 ways, 4 ways, and
I would
then
have much preferred a Parker versus Smets one-on-one match.
yes, I personally agree.
Because Parker was the champ going into that match, and I would have much preferred a match between
Or
just
honestly,
him and
Cushing.
Smets.
Or I honestly I wouldn't have done the Cushing single. Have Cushing play Parker for the championship. That would have felt at least a lot better. Whereas like Cushing is a legend. I understand that like a time she comes back, she deserves a title shot in a way. And like I it. I don't know. Like I understand that
Yeah.
you wanted to have all the IGs represented, but like again, it's whatever. Sure, I guess, but like again, we can't even get like the King Arthur because of the Griffey Nooms scheduling conflicts, which again, no one's fault. There's nothing we can do about that. But even the team's belt is like, oh, we're getting a new team for the first time, possibly defend, I guess, against Shazam. And it's cool they beat Shazam. Funny enough, where we're gonna we should mention this. Shazam not good at Spectacular for whatever reason.
No, Shazam was 1-3 at Spectaculars, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's funny because they don't have a lot of losses, but most of them usually come in Spectacular. Is all their
Yeah.
losses at Spectacular?
I'm gonna look it up.
I think it might be, but and then like again, part of my Sam Levine versus Merle match is kind of tainted because of big Dan Merle fan wanted him to win the match. Again, I'm biased. I'm admitting I'm biased, but also I don't know. I don't think Merle was coming off a lot of win streaks going into this match. Like Sam
Yeah.
was winning championships in his prime, and I felt like Merle needed to earn his way up there. And I don't know.
Okay, so I looked it up. The only loss they had that wasn't at Spectacular was when they lost the belts to King Arthur in June
Oh,
of
okay,
2022
that's right.
before the final Spectacular.
So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm biased in a lot of ways, but like what makes Spectacular so great, it's like the conclusion of a season. It's the end of these storylines. It's showing someone who has worked so hard the entire season to get that shot at the belt by either a tournament or something, and they get it. And this Spectacular, again,
It's
no
very
fault.
disjointed.
Yes, it's very like, what's an entertaining match? There, throw it out there. What's an entertaining match? Throw it out there. I'm not saying again. I'm sure some people have a lot of fond memories because it's the last Schmoedown match we ever see, and maybe part of the reason why I'll be honest, I don't have fond memories of this Schmoedown match is because going into this, they had these like month of unreleased matches that they were releasing before the Schmoedown, and they were just all coming out so slowly. They were trying to
Yeah.
like kind of string it out into a certain time, and there were a lot of them where like I got very burned out from the Schmoedown based on the upload schedule, based on how like, oh, none of these matches kind of mean anything because they're not going to go anywhere because the Schmoedown's ending. And I also had to do. I remember I was doing a bunch of videos on each of these matches, so I couldn't even I didn't really skip them because I was doing these like post match videos after each of these matches and stuff. So like,
Mhm.
admittedly, I was personally burned out, and again, I'm trying to be like I'm a biased spectator. My this might be tainting it too much, but this Spectacular, man. It felt too disjointed for me. It didn't feel like good representation because there's a lot I like. Even though the season had its ups and downs, there's a lot I like about the season, and it doesn't feel like there's very little to anything that represents this season
Yeah.
from the Spectacular, which is a shame. And it's just a lot of like matches that are like cool in concept. But I think what makes the Schmoedown great is the build up to the matches, is the being able to earn your shot. Like the founding fathers, when they first became, we didn't give them a title match because they're Dan Merle and John Roca. And what made their rise so great was the fact that everyone thought they would be so easy and they would instantly win the belts. And then they had so much adversity and they almost broke up because, and what saved them was Dan Merle using his free for all. if Dan Murrell doesn't win the free for all, which it's hard to win a free for all, Dan Murrell doesn't win a free for all. Founding Fathers probably break up, and
Yeah.
are both Murrell's and Roka's legacy are extremely different. I
Mm-hmm.
I like all these matches. I guess are again not a 4-way fan. I'm just like I don't like 4-ways or 5-ways. So but they're all cool in concept, I guess. But without the buildup, they just feel nothing to me. It'd be like the example I would be is like if the NBA said, "Hey, we're going to have LeBron reunite with Kyrie and Luca, and they're going to play against the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant, with Steph, Draymond, Clay, and Durant." And wouldn't that be awesome? Let's who would win? I mean, that's what like if the Cavs had one more superstar like Durant. I mean, like who would win? I mean, let's have a finals like that. And I'm like, sure, that's great, but like if you don't have a whole season building up to that and having adversity up to that, it just feels like I guess an exhibition fun match. It feels like the All Star game, and the NBA is having this problem, and also honestly every sport is having this problem, and this is what no All Star game has been good in a while. It's been a while
Yeah.
since, and this felt like just an All Star game. It's like every single this is the All Star game, and I don't know. I might be a bit rambly here, but like it just didn't work for me at all, at all, and that's okay. Okay, again, I don't think there was any satisfying conclusion given what they were. They didn't. It's not like they had. Like it's not like they had a month. Like okay, let's have a month to film matches to build up to Spectacular. No, they couldn't film any more matches. They got one more day with Spectacular. Let's see who we can round up, and I understand that, but that to me, that's never going to be satisfying.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's like all you didn't get to see any of the heels from season 9 get their comeuppance in a spectacular match or anything like that. It was just a very strange spectacular. My memories of this day were we did a watch along of this spectacular for um, LGR, and they were delayed and delayed and delayed in getting the video up because I guess they didn't try to upload it until like literally that morning, and the upload speed was slow, and then when it finally did come out it was in 360p because it hadn't processed to full HD, so it was terrible to watch. And it just I don't have a lot of very fond memories of this spectacular. The matches are weird. The only one that I was really interested in was the like Battle of the Dimalantas. I think it's great that they got to have a match against each other because we never did get a match between Alex and Molly, you know. So um, I think it was great that they got one. That one was at least a little bit based on the Star Wars stuff that had been going on the Patreon, because of course that season they'd taken Star Wars off the schedule of being on the channel, and that had made me mad. So I was glad there was at least a Star Wars match on this, and a good one at that. But this is a weird final spectacular.
Absolutely, it's a weird. I like in general the and this is not again. Can't emphasize this enough. Not the Schmoedown's fault. Not anyone involved working on the Schmoedown's fault. Based on the resources they had and how quickly they had to cobble this up. But like, it's just tough. It's just tough. Like the
Yeah.
only possible way I could think of them making this work is have Marisol versus Bateman and have the winner immediately play Sam Levine. Have the same thing where Bateman played 2 matches in a row. Have Marisol, Bateman have those 2 matches, battle the Dimalantas. Tokyo Drift versus Shazam. Sure, there's nothing we can do about Griffey Nooms' scheduling. And then instead of a 4-way, I would do Cushing versus Robert Parker championship match. Make it 1v1, bring Cushing back, and that would be the hype of like, oh my God, Cushing's coming back. Can't you win the belt off of Robert Parker? The definition of like one of the old school goats versus this up and newcomer who is like looks unbeatable in a way. So like, but even then, that I would probably still have problems with that. It was tough to find a way for the Spectacular to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. It was always going to be tough to do like a series finale for the Schmoedown, but this just wasn't it. Let's talk about the historical importance of the Spectacular, and then we'll wrap this up because we've been here for almost an hour already. This obviously is one of the biggest events that they ever put on throughout the Schmoedown's history. I think there's a lot of really important historical matches and moments, and that it's extremely important to the Schmoedown as a whole.
Absolutely. I mean, it again, I'll go back to this, like the build up and like the Schmoedown. What made the Schmoedown so great is we had a season of amazing build up, and those tournaments were the apex of that, of like these storylines that are built through both Christian's mind, but also through the wins and losses put on the screen. And we get to see these competitors who have gone maybe up and down seasons, but are able to win a tournament, or competitors who look extremely dominant through the tournament in some way. We have one match that is going to be storyline driven, whether it's a manager ball, whether it's we have usually one number one contendership or something like that. One of those types of matches where it's like, okay, this is the non-championship match, and going into that, I think like it's important. You can build up all you want, but you can't keep building up. There has to be a conclusion. There has to be a end point, if you will. It's like, okay, we're building this up, but there's a clear end point in mind. If you just keep building up and you have no idea when it's going to end, which might be the problem with the Schmoedown storyline, but we'll get to that in its own episode. But the build up, that because we have a clear sight, so yeah, okay, this build up is awesome, and we know it's ending as Spectacular. That's what makes Spectacular so awesome, but it makes the build up work as well. It's they work off each other. The build up of the entire season and Spectacular. Without the build up, we wouldn't have great Spectaculars. Without Spectacular, the build up wouldn't matter as much, and we wouldn't care as much. And I think without Spectacular, the Schmoedown would be a bit less fun, a bit less interesting, and a bit harder for it to take off as it did in its prime.
I agree. Yeah, the Spectacular is extremely important, and I miss it this time of year. I miss the 2 the hours long Spectaculars that we used to get, because they were just so much fun to like curl up and watch.
Absolutely. I get my tub of ice cream, pretzels, and just like pig out. Basically, it was
Yeah.
was truly like a great day to look forward. And usually, I was in college at the time, so it'd be the end of finals. What would happen is I just finished finals, and I just have a whole day where I could just be like, I'm pigging out, I'm enjoying myself. I survived finals somehow, and
Yeah.
it's just nice.
Yeah. Well, we miss Schmoedown Spectacular, but thank you everyone for joining us here today. Josh, where can people find you?
You can find me here on LGR. You won't find me on the fantasy show anymore because I've sadly been eliminated. But it's been a good season, and I wish all the remaining competitors good luck. Trying to be a gracious, I've been taking all my energy to be a gracious sport, but supporting me is supporting LGR. So any way you're supporting LGR, leave us a comment. I hope you all have a happy holidays. Let us know your favorite Spectacular moments, your favorite Spectacular. Let us know what future episodes you would like us to do. Let us know. Like, comment, subscribe, and just supporting LGR is supporting me.
Yeah, and you can help support LGR by liking and sharing this video, subscribing to the channel. We just hit 1,000 subscribers on the channel. Thank you ever so much to everyone for subscribing. And if you want to support us a little bit further, you can buy us a coffee over on our Ko-Fi page, ko-fi.com/LGR_network. There's some tiers there that get you certain perks, but $3 a month will get you into the Discord, where you can still talk Schmoedown with us if you want to. So check it out. And until next month, everybody, have a happy and safe new year. And we are out of here.
It's for real.